Have you ever felt like everything that once made you happy suddenly became meaningless? You wake up, look around, and realize nothing truly excites you anymore. The movies you used to love now feel like empty loops. Conversations feel draining, repetitive. Even the hobbies that once made your heart race no longer stir anything inside you, and you start to wonder, is this really all there is? Is this what life is supposed to feel like? If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. Today, we're not talking about simple boredom or temporary burnout. We're talking about a quiet but powerful phenomenon, a state where you lose connection to meaning, to passion, and worst of all, to yourself. This isn't just a story about fatigue. This is a calling from within, a whisper from your subconscious that Swiss psychologist Carl Jung spent his life trying to decode. Why do you feel empty even when you seem to have everything? Why does the right path society laid out for you leave you feeling so lost? And if the goals you've been chasing are just hollow shells, then what's truly worth living for? Stay with us until the end of this video, because we're not just uncovering why this happens, we're going to reveal a profound truth, one that can transform how you experience every moment from this day forward. If you've been searching for joy, for that spark in your eyes, for a reason to live fully again, watch until the very last second. And if you've ever gone through this yourself, share your experience in the comments below. You're not alone, but you also don't have to stay in the dark. There comes a point in life, often later than we expect, when the familiar no longer feels fulfilling. You may have raised a family, built a career, or kept a home for decades. You've done what society asked of you, followed the rules, achieved stability, and yet now, in the stillness of your days, something feels missing. Hobbies don't spark excitement like they used to. Conversations feel repetitive, and even joyful occasions seem to pass without leaving much of a mark. For many older adults, this is more than boredom. It's a quiet question echoing inside. Is this all there is? It's easy to dismiss this feeling. People might tell you to stay busy or try something new, but sometimes even trying doesn't help. What no one talks about is that this sense of emptiness is not just emotional, it's existential. It's a sign that your inner world is shifting, asking for something deeper than routine or entertainment. Psychologist Carl Jung believed that when life feels dull and disconnected, it's not because you've lost interest in the world. It's because you've lost connection with a part of yourself, a part that's ready to evolve. You see, we spend much of our lives building identities around what we do for others, being a parent, a worker, a provider, a caretaker, and while those roles are meaningful, they're not the whole of who we are. Eventually, when those roles change or fade, we're left facing ourselves. That's when the real journey begins, not the one society planned for us, but the one our soul quietly longs for. This phase of life, if approached with intention, isn't the end of meaning. It's the beginning of a deeper, more personal one. And yet, the silence of retirement, the loss of structure, or even the physical limitations of aging can make this journey feel daunting. Many older adults turn to distractions, television, news, busy work, just to avoid the uncomfortable feeling of stillness. But stillness is not your enemy. In fact, it may be your greatest ally, because it's in the quiet, when no one else is watching, that your most important questions begin to rise. Who am I now? What matters most to me at this stage of life? What's left unfinished in my heart? You may not have asked yourself those questions in decades, and that's okay. The truth is, many people never do. But you have an opportunity, a powerful one. You have the chance to turn inward and rediscover the parts of you that were left behind while you cared for everyone else. This isn't about reinventing your life in some flashy way. It's about listening to your own soul, finding meaning in the ordinary, and building a sense of fulfillment that isn't dependent on anyone else. Imagine if the rest of your life wasn't about doing more, but about feeling more. More connected, more grounded, more yourself. Imagine finding joy, not in grand achievements, but in small, intentional moments. Writing a letter to your younger self, planting something with your own hands, sharing a story with someone who needs to hear it. These are not just nice ideas. They are healing acts of reconnection. They remind you that your life still has depth, wisdom, and beauty waiting to be expressed. It's not too late to shift the way you experience the world. In fact, many people find their truest voice and deepest peace later in life, once the noise of expectation quiets down. If you've ever felt like the world has forgotten you or that your best years are behind you, let me assure you, they're not. They might just be waiting for you to come back to yourself. In the next section, we'll explore how this transformation begins, not through massive change, but through quiet awareness and meaningful questions. You'll learn how to step into this new chapter with curiosity, grace, and renewed purpose. Because no matter your age, it's never too late to feel alive again. When you begin to sit with yourself in that stillness, something unexpected can happen. Memories start to return, not always loud or dramatic, but soft, quiet flashes of moments that once meant something. The feel of your child's hand in yours, the way your partner used to laugh at the smallest joke, the warmth of a holiday dinner, even the simple sound of birds outside your window during springtime. These memories don't come just to remind you of the past. Sometimes they come to ask you a question. What part of yourself did you leave behind in those moments? As we grow older, it's common to carry an invisible weight. Regret for the things we didn't do, sorrow for the people we lost, confusion over how quickly time moved. Life, it seems, has gone by in a series of seasons. Some were filled with joy, others we barely survived. And now, in this quieter season, we're left to make sense of all that's come before. That sense-making can be lonely. You may find yourself wondering if anyone remembers who you used to be, if you even remember who you used to be. It's in this state of reflection that a painful truth sometimes surfaces. The person you once were may no longer feel real. You may not recognize yourself in the mirror, not just because of age, but because life has layered you with so many roles, so many expectations, that your own essence feels buried. That's not failure, it's life. But the sorrow that comes with it is real. It's the grief of losing your younger self without having said goodbye properly. And that grief deserves space. In our culture, especially in America, we are taught to push through pain, to stay productive, to wear a smile even when our hearts feel heavy. But if you are in this chapter of your life, feeling unanchored or emotionally flat, you are not broken. You are human. The truth is, many seniors silently carry this ache, but few speak of it. Maybe they're afraid of being seen as weak. Maybe they don't want to worry their children. Maybe, after giving so much for so long, they don't feel entitled to ask for more. But you are entitled to feel, to reflect, to grieve, and most of all, to remember, because hidden in those memories are not just stories. They are clues, clues to who you are at your core. Perhaps you once loved to sing but gave it up when life got too busy. Perhaps you loved to write or paint or walk in the woods. Those moments may have seemed small at the time, but they were you. And if you feel lost now, perhaps it's because you lost touch with those parts that once made you feel most alive. The pain of disconnection, especially in later years, is not just about loneliness. It's about something deeper, the fading sense that your presence in the world matters. And that's the lie age tries to tell us, that our value diminishes with time. But it doesn't. Your story, your wisdom, your experiences, they are irreplaceable. No one else has lived what you've lived. And even if the world moves faster now, even if technology and culture feel foreign, you still have something that the world needs, your truth. But to reclaim that truth, you must first be willing to look inward, not with judgment, but with gentleness. Ask yourself, what made me feel joyful when I was younger? What did I used to dream about before life got in the way? Who was I before the roles, before the responsibilities? These are hard questions, and they may stir up sadness. But they also stir up life, because beneath that sorrow is a heartbeat, a desire to feel like you again, not just someone going through the motions. If you feel that nothing excites you anymore, it may not be because you've lost your passion. It may be because your passion is buried under years of silence, self-sacrifice and survival. And the way to bring it back is not to chase something new, but to remember something old, something forgotten, something sacred. We'll begin to gently uncover those sacred pieces, the ones that still live quietly within you. Through this process of reflection and reconnection, you'll see that the emptiness you feel today is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a return to meaning, a return to self, and maybe, just maybe, a return to joy. So where do we go from here, after the memories have surfaced, after the ache of who we used to be has settled into something quieter but still present? That's the question many older adults find themselves asking, even if only in the privacy of their thoughts. You've looked back, you've remembered, and perhaps you've even grieved. But now what? When the past feels out of reach and the future seems uncertain, how do you begin to move forward without feeling like you're just drifting through time? The truth is, many people in later life feel as if they're standing in a kind of limbo, not quite who they were and not yet sure who they're becoming. It can feel like the roles that once defined you have dissolved. You're no longer raising children, no longer working full-time, no longer needed in the ways you once were. And while part of you may welcome the rest, the quiet, even the freedom, another part aches for meaning, for purpose that feels real, not just routine. This is not a small or superficial struggle. It's one of the deepest questions a person can face. What is my life for now? And in our fast-moving world, where everything seems to celebrate youth, energy, and productivity, it's easy to feel like you've been left behind. That feeling doesn't just bring sadness, it brings a sense of invisibility. You might wonder if anyone really sees you anymore, hears you, understands the complexity of where you are. But I promise you this, your worth has not expired. In fact, it may be waiting to be rediscovered in a way that's more profound than ever before. Here's something we often forget, especially in American culture. Meaning doesn't have to come from doing big things. It often comes from being fully present in small ones, from noticing rather than achieving, from connecting rather than completing. That shift in perspective can change everything, and it starts with something deceptively simple: curiosity. Ask yourself gently, what still stirs something in me? It doesn't have to be big or impressive. Maybe it's the sound of the wind through the trees. Maybe it's the comfort of a familiar recipe. Maybe it's the idea of writing down your story, not for anyone else, but just to remember what it was like to be you. These aren't hobbies, they're lifelines. They are tiny threads that pull you back into yourself, that say, you are still here, and there is still something inside you that wants to feel. Sometimes the hardest part is giving ourselves permission to follow those threads. After so many years of living for others, of holding things together, of pushing through, we forget that we're allowed to rediscover joy. We forget that feeling alive doesn't require youth. It requires attention. And attention begins in silence, in reflection, in still moments that make space for something new to grow, even if that new is simply remembering something you loved long ago. There's something deeply spiritual about this phase of life. When the noise of the world dies down and you're left with your own thoughts, you begin to realize that your presence, your very being, is enough. You don't need to prove anything anymore. You don't need to chase approval. What you do need is to honor yourself, to treat your inner world with the same kindness you've given to so many others over the years. Let yourself be curious again. Let yourself try small things without pressure. Take a walk without a destination. Play a piece of music that once moved you. Let your hands create something, anything. The goal isn't to be productive, it's to be present. And it's in that presence that meaning slowly starts to return. It's not loud, it doesn't announce itself, but it's there, like a whisper that grows stronger each time you listen. You may feel that the best parts of your life are behind you, but what if that's not true? What if the richest, most meaningful chapter is the one you're about to write now? Not for anyone else's approval, but for your own soul. The story isn't over. You're still breathing, still capable of wonder, still holding memories that no one else in the world carries quite like you do. In the next section, we'll begin exploring how to turn these small sparks into steady light, how to move from quiet reflection into meaningful action, even if it's slow, even if it's fragile at first. Because from this place of vulnerability and truth, something new is possible. Not a return to the past, but a deeper embrace of the present and a rediscovery of the person you've always been, waiting patiently beneath the surface. And so, as you begin to follow those quiet threads of curiosity, as you slowly rediscover what it feels like to be truly present again, something deeper begins to stir, something more difficult, yet more important. The realization that you've changed, but you're not yet sure who you've become. This is where many older adults feel the most lost, not in the absence of activity, but in the absence of identity. When your days are no longer defined by deadlines or responsibilities, when no one urgently needs you the way they once did, the question becomes hauntingly clear. Who am I now, when I'm not who I used to be? This isn't just a crisis of boredom, it's an identity shift, and few people talk about how painful it can be. There is grief in letting go of the person you were. There is sorrow in realizing that certain roles, relationships, or places that once anchored you no longer fit. You may find yourself looking at old photographs, not just to remember the moments, but to remember yourself, the person you used to be, the energy, the laughter, the way your presence once shaped a household, a workplace, a community. Now things feel quieter. The phone rings less. The house may feel too still. And while part of you has adjusted, another part aches with a question you may not have dared to speak aloud. Do I still matter? The world doesn't always help you answer that. In fact, modern culture has a tendency to overlook the aging, treating youth as the pinnacle of value and leaving the rest in the background. That leaves many older adults carrying a quiet, unspoken sadness, a sense of being invisible in a world that once revolved around them. But just because the world stops asking for your time doesn't mean you have nothing left to give. In fact, this may be the time when what you have to give is more valuable than ever if you can reconnect with it. Carl Jung spoke of this phase as the second half of life, not a decline, but a return to essence, a return to soul. But in order to step into this next chapter, you must do something most people resist. You must sit still long enough to feel what's shifting inside you. That means making space to feel the loss of who you were, to feel the sadness of what has passed, and to allow that sadness not to define you, but to open you. Because beneath grief often lies truth, that your story is not over. It is simply changing shape. And here is where a new kind of courage is needed. Not the bold, action-driven courage of youth, but the quiet bravery of facing yourself honestly. What do you truly miss? What still hurts? What feels unresolved? These aren't easy questions, but they are the ones that heal. They're the ones that bring clarity, that help you sift through the noise and rediscover what's real. You don't have to rush this process. You don't need to have answers right away, but you do need to give yourself permission to ask. And in the asking, you may notice something else. The old ways of seeking happiness no longer satisfy. The distractions, the shopping, the scrolling, the surface-level entertainment, they lose their shine, and that can feel disappointing, even frightening. But it's also a clue that you're ready for something deeper. You no longer want to be entertained. You want to be moved. You want to feel a reason to wake up, not just a routine to repeat. That longing is sacred. It means you're still very much alive. So where do you begin? Not with reinvention, but with remembrance. Not with grand plans, but with gentle questions. What values still live in you? What truths have carried you through your hardest seasons? What do you still long to express before your time here is done? These questions can lead you back to yourself, not the version of you that fulfilled roles for others, but the one that was always quietly waiting underneath. This journey isn't glamorous, and it may not look like much from the outside, but from within, it is everything. It is the process of becoming whole again. And it starts not with trying to fix yourself, but with honoring everything you've already been. The joys, the mistakes, the moments that mattered, and the ones that passed too quickly. All of it belongs. All of it has shaped the person you are now, and that person, even in stillness, even in sadness, still holds value. We'll explore what it means to move from reflection into gentle action, how to take the insights you've uncovered and begin weaving them into your daily life. Because while reflection brings clarity, it's in the small, intentional steps forward that you begin to rebuild meaning. One choice, one moment, one breath at a time. And now, as you stand at the edge of that inner reckoning, after allowing the silence to speak, after grieving who you used to be, and after gently asking the hard questions, you might find yourself facing a new kind of fear. What if I never feel excited again? What if nothing ever lights me up the way it used to? It's a quiet fear, but it lingers. And for many older adults, it becomes a weight they carry in silence, because somewhere along the way, we were told that passion and purpose belonged to the young, and that aging meant slowly fading out of relevance, of joy, of meaning. But what if that isn't true? What if the emptiness you feel isn't a sign of something broken, but a sign that you are ready for something different, something deeper than excitement, louder than distraction, and richer than routine? Because sometimes, what you're searching for isn't newness, it's truth. The kind of truth that doesn't demand applause or approval, but gives you peace in the quiet moments. And that kind of peace begins not with chasing more, but with reclaiming presence, with learning how to live again right where you are. Still, that's easier said than done, because even when you've reflected, even when you've remembered, there's often still a gap between what you feel and what you do. You may know you want to reconnect with life, but how? What does that actually look like in a world that's so fast, so noisy, so changed from the one you once knew? And what if your body can't do what it used to, or your energy isn't what it was? These are real questions, and they deserve real, compassionate answers. The first step is simple, though not always easy. Create space for stillness each day. Not just the absence of sound or motion, but the kind of stillness that lets you hear your own thoughts again. Sit by a window in the morning, watch the light shift on the walls. Let your mind wander, not toward worry, but toward wonder. This kind of quiet doesn't produce quick results, but it creates room for something beautiful, clarity. And from clarity, even the smallest desire can begin to bloom. Maybe you remember how much you loved tending to your garden. Maybe you always wanted to write your life story but never had the time. Maybe your hands still remember how to play piano, or how to sketch a face, or knead dough, or fold paper into little cranes like you once showed your grandchild. These aren't hobbies. They are portals back to yourself. They are proof that your spirit still lives beneath the layers of routine and forgetting. But the key is to approach them gently, without pressure, without performance. Let joy return as a visitor, not a task. And if your physical body makes some things harder now, don't let that stop you from seeking expression in new ways. Perhaps you can't walk far anymore, but your words can travel. Perhaps you can't see as clearly, but you can still listen deeply to music, to bird song, to the sound of your own breath. Presence is not limited by mobility. It is an inner posture, a willingness to say, "This moment still belongs to me." Equally important is connection. So many older adults begin to withdraw, especially when the people who once filled their lives are no longer there. But your voice still matters, your story still matters. Whether you speak to a neighbor, a grandchild, a stranger at the market, it matters, and so does listening. Sometimes the deepest healing happens not when you speak, but when someone else finally feels heard by you, with your lifetime of wisdom and attention. That kind of exchange can bring warmth back to the coldest days. Perhaps you still wonder, will I ever feel truly alive again? And the honest answer is this: not in the way you once did, but in a new way. Yes, a quieter way, a deeper, more rooted way. The kind of aliveness that doesn't depend on adrenaline or applause, but on meaning, on alignment, on the simple beauty of choosing presence over numbness. In the next section, we'll explore how that presence can become a practice, how daily choices, however small, can rebuild your sense of purpose. Because even now, your story is unfolding, and though the chapters may look different, they still carry weight. They still matter. You still matter. And this time of your life may hold more than you ever imagined if you dare to slow down, listen inward, and let it come to you. And now, as you stand at the edge of that inner reckoning, after allowing the silence to speak, after grieving who you used to be, and after gently asking the hard questions, you might find yourself facing a new kind of fear. What if I never feel excited again? What if nothing ever lights me up the way it used to? It's a quiet fear, but it lingers. And for many older adults, it becomes a weight they carry in silence, because somewhere along the way, we were told that passion and purpose belong to the young, and that aging meant slowly fading out of relevance, of joy, of meaning. But what if that isn't true? What if the emptiness you feel isn't a sign of something broken, but a sign that you are ready for something different? Something deeper than excitement, louder than distraction, and richer than routine. Because sometimes what you're searching for isn't newness, it's truth. The kind of truth that doesn't demand applause or approval, but gives you peace in the quiet moments. Real questions, and they deserve real, compassionate answers. The first step is simple, though not always easy. Create space for stillness each day. Not just the absence of sound or motion, but the kind of stillness that lets you hear your own thoughts again. Sit by a window in the morning, watch the light shift on the walls. Let your mind wander, not toward worry, but toward wonder. This kind of quiet doesn't produce quick results, but it creates room for something beautiful, clarity. And from clarity, even the smallest desire can begin to bloom. Maybe you remember how much you loved tending to your garden. Maybe you always wanted to write your life story but never had the time. Maybe your hands still remember how to play piano, or how to sketch a face, or knead dough, or fold paper into little cranes like you once showed your grandchild. These aren't hobbies. They are portals back to yourself. They are proof that your spirit still lives beneath the layers of routine and forgetting. But the key is to approach them gently, without pressure, without performance. Let joy return as a visitor, not a task. And if your physical body makes some things harder now, don't let that stop you from seeking expression in new ways. Perhaps you can't walk far anymore, but your words can travel. Perhaps you can't see as clearly, but you can still listen deeply to music, to birdsong, to the sound of your own breath. Presence is not limited by mobility. It is an inner posture, a willingness to say, "This moment still belongs to me." Equally important is connection. So many older adults begin to withdraw, especially when the people who once filled their lives are no longer there. But your voice still matters. Your story still matters. Whether you speak to a neighbor, a grandchild, a stranger at the market, it matters. And so does listening. Sometimes the deepest healing happens not when you speak, but when someone else finally feels heard by you, with your lifetime of wisdom and attention. That kind of exchange can bring warmth back to the coldest days. Perhaps you still wonder, will I ever feel truly alive again? And the honest answer is this: not in the way you once did, but in a new way. Yes, a quieter way, a deeper, more rooted way. The kind of aliveness that doesn't depend on adrenaline or applause, but on meaning, on alignment, on the simple beauty of choosing presence over numbness. So if you've been feeling lost, disconnected, or unsure of what comes next, know this: you are not alone. And this moment, right now, can be the beginning of something deeply meaningful. You are not finished. Your presence still holds power. The silence you feel is not emptiness, but an invitation to return to yourself, to slow down, reflect, and begin again. Not by chasing the life you once had, but by embracing the life that still wants to unfold through you. The path forward is not loud or fast, but it is real, and with each quiet step, you reclaim not only your joy, but your place in the world.